I ask the clerk to call the roll.
Ms. Bourne?
Here.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Ms. Materney? Here. Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Van Nuysen?
Here.
Mr. Weber?
Here.
Thank you. Please join me and stand if you're able and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Minutes of the council meeting of July 6, 2021.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe everyone has received a copy of the meeting minutes. I hadn't received any notifications of any potential changes, so I would like to move to approve the minutes of the Perrysburg City Council meeting held on July 6, 2020, as written, and dispense with the reading.
I have discussion.
We had a second? Okay, so we can do discussion. Go ahead.
I will not vote for the minutes unless these following items are in the minutes. The last time I remember, I congratulated the administration on a savings of $35,000 on Resolution 42, or a savings of 27% less. And I asked the law director, you won't be asking for more money in the future. And then also on Resolution 43, 2021, I congratulated the administration on a savings of $49,000 and the lowest bid. I asked the law director, you won't be asking for more money in the future, right? So those were the things that I was mentioning.
Okay, any other discussion?
I think I read that already. So was it in the It was in the messenger. Oh, okay. I know I read it. Okay, it wasn't in these minutes. I know I read it somewhere. Okay. Yeah.
Are those types of comments traditionally in our minutes as prepared? I just out of curiosity.
Not to my knowledge.
Because I know those comments are made
Well, they were
decently frequent.
Well, I think that it would be nice to have them mentioned on the record on both of those.
The question would be if we want to have verbatim minutes or if we just want a general.
It's not like we don't have access to it on audio, so.
Are you? I guess I'm just trying to get for why you're voting no. Do you feel like these minutes don't accurate? I know it's there's parts that are cut out always. Do you feel like those comments being left out change the base meaning of the minutes, or
no, I just think they were important things to say. I mean, there were important points, congratulating the savings on both things. And, just asking if we were going to ask for more money in the future. I think there were valid questions and comments that should have been mentioned.
They were just the low bids.
Weren't they just the low bids? They were the low bids for those projects.
Correct.
Right? Correct.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll call the roll.
Ms. Bourne?
No.
Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
Ms. Materney?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Van Nuysen?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
Letters, communication, and citizens' concerns. If you have a concern, please come to the mic.
Just real briefly, Jim Hagan, 10741 Avenue Road. Just like to say thank you in terms of I watched the last council minute on video as opposed to reading the minutes, which I appreciate, which leads to my next question. When do you think you may put that online to stream so people can enjoy it from home without having to get themselves out to do themselves at risk?
We want everybody to come and participate. So, no. That's something we're working on. There's some technical difficulties with the building and some other factors that we're trying to address. But this seems to be a good way to record it and then make it available, and people can listen online, which some people have continually done since we've started doing that.
Okay, and my other question or concern I had, obviously I came uptown, I haven't been uptown for quite a while, was rather surprised by the new security measures or whatever. I did not know that was going to go into place. Is this going to be permanent fixture type of thing? Or?
They started Monday, and yes. We were one of the few buildings, governmental buildings in all of Wood County that did not have security towards getting into the building. And we have had, unfortunately, some situations that have put some employees at risk because there has been no security. So we thought this was the proper measure to balance the need for the community to have access to the public space and also protect staff.
Okay. Thank you.
If I can ask a quick question to the administration with regards to the videos on YouTube, it's not something I've necessarily kept up on how quickly those are posted, but about what's the turnaround time to get those onto the site?
Next day.
Next day, okay. It'd be nice for the residents to have a time frame when those will be hitting, if possible.
Are we still looking into committees getting posted as well?
Yes, yes, we are.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Okay, administrative reports. I have no report other than to make some recommendations to some committees. 2 were reappointments, both students. Donna Bruning for the Litter Prevention and Recycling Board, and Caleb Christian for the Citizens Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, and then a new appointment for Craig Rader for the Board of Zoning Appeals, filling an unexpired term.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I would like to make a motion to approve those appointments. The Appointment Review Committee did meet and recommend 3-0.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
We want to thank them for their continued service, and we look forward to them continuing to serve on committees for the City of Perrysburg. City Administrator,
No report?
Finance Director,
I have nothing to report.
Law Director is not here. President of Council report.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this isn't necessarily on, but it was brought to our attention, I think last week. And we had made mention of our Wood County Transportation Improvement District that we are members of. We have 2 people on the committee, myself is one of them, and Jim Begonis is the other person. Those have to be reappointed by the governing bodies, which would be City Council. So what I would hope to see is if we might be able to have a motion to just continue the appointments. I know Mr. Begonis would like to continue staying on, and if the council's willing, I wouldn't mind staying on as well.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Bourne,
Yes on Mr. Bigdonis, no on Mr. Smith.
Let's do them separately then.
Okay.
Fine, so we have a clear record. Let's do Mr. Bagdonis first, who we're delighted to continue to serve. So roll call for Mr. Bagdonis.
Ms.
Yes on
Bourne,
Mr. Bigdonis.
Yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
We probably ought to have a second motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Jonathan Smith for that same appointment.
Reappoint or?
To reappoint Jonathan Smith for the same appointment.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Ms. Bourne,
No.
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Materney,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mr. Van Huzen,
Yes.
Mr. Weber.
Yes.
Okay, I think we navigated that pretty well without our lawyer. Anything else, President Council?
That is the end of my report. Thank you.
Finance and Economic Development?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no report. Our next meeting would be Tuesday, August 10th at 5:30 PM.
Thank you. Safety Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not have a report. Our next meeting will be August the 24th, Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Recreation Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a meeting scheduled for the second Tuesday at 6:30 in August, and I have no report.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning?
Thank you, Your Honor. No report. We meet on Wednesday, August 11th at 5:30.
Personnel?
Thank you. I do have a report. We had a Personnel Committee meeting held July 20th, 2021. Meeting was called to order at 5:03 p.m. by myself. The committee members that were present were myself, Tim McCarthy, and Mark Weber. Also present were Bridget Cabot, Case Andretto, and Kelly Chalfant. We approved the minutes. Then we reviewed the proposed pay bands for non-union employees. The administration requested approval of the pay bands that were developed as a result of the Zashin and Rich wage study. Ms. Cabot stated that the salary survey and pay band sheets showing changes to a couple of titles and the addition of the position of HR coordinator, which they envisioned for the future, were emailed to the committee. She called attention to another sheet with information requested by Mr. McCarthy regarding past changes in the ranges. She said that the ranges were approved in 2006, and since then, there were 2 adjustments totaling 10% to the top end of all their ranges. She said an additional 5% was added to the top end of the police chief, fire chief, deputy police chief, and deputy fire chief pay ranges. In comparison, over the same period of time, the fire bargaining unit has had increases of nearly 39%. The police bargaining unit's 37.4%. AF's, I'm not sure what that's. AFSME. 34%, and CPI 29.04%. She stressed that this request is for approval of the pay bands, not raises. She added that there are currently 11 redlined employees if nothing changes. Another 3 will max out in the next year. She said the goal is to attract and retain quality employees. Ms. Indretto said that she is proposing a first reading on the pay bands at the next council meeting and hopefully a vote with the second reading at the August city council meeting. Mr. Coleman asked what the process would look like given the broad ranges. Ms. Cabot said that the mayor is limited to 7% increases and anything above that would have to go to city council. She said that equity adjustments would be a part of the 2022 budget process, but for some positions it could take a few years. There was discussion on how positions were placed into different bands. Ms. Indretto stated that Band E are hourly employees. Band A is a standalone for the city administrator. Band B is for department and division heads. Band C is deputy type positions, and Band D is all other non-bargaining city staff. Mr. Coleman questioned the correlation between the bands and the positions that require city council approval. There was a brief discussion regarding what positions require city council approval, and Mr. McCarthy said that for those positions, city council should be made aware of the salary made with the job offer. Mr. Coleman stated that he does not want to be tied to a certain amount for future increases in the bands, but they should be reviewed on a regular basis. The committee decided that the bands should be reviewed in even years beginning in 2024. The committee agreed 3-0 to move the proposed pay bands onto city council. I will finish the next part of my report after I go ahead and just introduce this for discussion. So I will, with that, introduce Ordinance 39, 2021, and move that the rules be suspended to allow for its reading by number and title only.
Second.
Discussion.
I
Do
have,
we have a roll for?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, my bad. No, we're just.
Oh, yeah, it's just discussing.
We're just having discussion, because we're not moving it for a passage.
I do have some discussion. I would like to have a printout of the current salaries of all the people on the list. Is that the current list?
Yeah. So if you do the ordinance, it'll have all.
We submit all that to all.
Yeah, that was
The
emailed,
range.
that was emailed to all of us.
Okay,
Thank
but is that the actual people or just the positions? That's what I'm asking.
It's well,
That was the actual salary of the people in the positions when that survey was done.
So the ordinance has the pay ranges currently for each position and then the email at the exact salary.
Right, I'm aware of that. What I was asking for were the people that are in the current positions along with that. That's what I'm listening for a list for.
The answer is yes.
Thank you.
I will say there were a lot, I'll continue discussion on this, hopefully briefly. There were a lot of people there at that meeting that night. One of the things, and it was kind of discussed in the minutes or the report there, is what I would like to develop is if we're going to be doing these reviews and we're doing these bans, some sort of congruency with our policy and procedures as well. You know, I'm going to try to say this without focusing on certain positions, but if we have, you know, pay band A and they go, you know, obviously right now that's just the city administrator, so they have a process of themselves. But pay band B is kind of what drew my attention, especially as a council member. These are kind of our department heads and standalone divisions. And most of them, I believe, do go through council approval. So what I would suggest is For that Band B, what we may want to look at is our policy and procedures for whether those positions need council approval, and take these bands as an opportunity to make the process congruent for all those people within that division, if that makes sense. So when we talked about the prosecutor, I know that was part of the discussion. I viewed that as someone that's a department head. I know that comes before council, so I was kind of surprised to see that band C. So what I would like to do is, if I have no problem with the bands the way they are, I would like to see congruency with our policy and procedures for the hiring process for those bands as well, and what the administration has to report to us and the procedures we go to approve them is my main point for that.
Corey, I'm just wondering, you're referring to the prosecutor and then the law director positions as separate positions. Doesn't it say in the charter that the law director or the prosecutor reports to the law director? I'm pretty sure it does. That would probably have to be changed.
And that's part of the changes I'm talking about. So if we have any conflicting, I know we're kind of setting a hierarchy, so to speak, with these bands and reporting. Kind of, right? Quasi. So when I look at that, I would like it to reflect in our code. If we need to make changes in our code that more accurately reflect the direction we're headed, then we need to keep those in mind moving forward and make those changes at personnel as well.
I will say that part of the Zashin and Rich survey and composition of these pay bands, some of it is hierarchical, some of it is based on past experience in hiring several of these positions in the very near past. Some is based on the difficulty in obtaining certain licensure. So it's a little bit of a mix of all of those things, but there is some that are very hierarchical. You can see in there the deputy finance director, the finance director, deputy finance director, tax commissioner. Tax commissioner reports to deputy finance director that reports to the finance director. Currently, our org chart has that the prosecutor reports to the law director. That's current organizational structure. Some of those in Band B do not come before council to be affirmed by council. There's 3 of those positions. There's also a position on here that we've never had, which is safety director, there's currently a Department of Public Safety that really actually has nothing in it. I'm the safety director currently by title in the code, but currently the assistant to myself, which John Eckel vacated that position upon his retirement, that does not go before council. Human Resources Manager by code does not go before council. And the city engineer, we're looking to move directly underneath me as part of my administrative staff. And we've had that little bit of that discussion in the Personnel Committee. That would, at least based on current code, would take that person out of a confirmation process with city council because they would no longer be a division head. Currently, they're a division of public service, yet the public service director does not have that much interaction with that position. I myself have more interaction than any other city employee because they're kind of like a IT department, human resource department. They're serving multiple departments internally, as well as dealing with some outside developers and contractors. So that's something that we're looking at to bring towards city council through the personnel committee process. And I think I mentioned at our last personnel committee meeting, dependent on how council approves these pay bands, we still have some cleanup to do then in the personnel code that deals with nomenclature, which currently puts positions into an executive, a senior level, an administrative level, and a support services level that would kind of be abolished with these pay bands, and we'd have to kind of recreate that nomenclature in a different format. But there's also a section in that talks about who's appointed by the mayor and gets confirmed by council mostly, but there's also some other sections that's kind of sprinkled throughout. So
who are the 3 that don't go through?
So currently, the assistant to the administrator does not, human resources manager does not. Position number 7, which is safety director, is one we've never had, but I hold it in title currently by statute. And then we have the city engineer, which currently just went through the confirmation process. But if we make that a direct employee of mine as part of my administration, that would make them no longer a division head and would potentially take them out of that confirmation process. Now, obviously, council has the ability to change those code sections to have whomever it is they would like to go before your council to be confirmed.
Do you view that, and I know this is a tough question to ask you with all the council up here, do you have any feedback as to why? So what I'm shooting for is, hey, if you're in Band B, you're making between 80 and 140,000 from our city. Band A is obviously higher tier, so that's going to go through confirmation as well. I guess what I'm trying to establish is the congruency. Hey, if we're paying you in this range, you're going to get council approval, and just make that across the board is kind of the idea on what are the drawbacks that you see with that?
I don't know if there's necessarily a lot of drawbacks, because I mean, right now, the police and fire divisions have chiefs that come before director of law. I mean, my assistant, it's vacant currently, we're rewriting the position description. Currently, my challenge is I don't really have any place to house this person once we hire them. Safety director, you may at some point actually hire a safety director. I don't think it would be in the same pay band necessarily as the two people that they would be directly in charge of, which would be the police and fire chief. That seems like that perhaps would be in a separate band, but again, currently it's in this band. City engineer, I don't know that most on council understand what a city engineer does, the background that we are looking for, versus the police chief and fire chief seems pretty obvious what their job is. There's probably some pros and cons both ways.
Yeah, I guess when I'm viewing it, I just view it as almost like a checks and balance thing. Once we're spending a certain amount on an employee, I understand that they're not all department heads, but they're in this band where, it gives you guys a little availability to put it on us for approving as well, or spread the blame, so to speak, on a bad hire and things like that. But I guess that's where I'm coming from. To me, it would be nice to have just a congruency of checks and balances when we're paying above a certain amount, or we're confirming these people because they're important positions. That's just my thoughts on it.
I could certainly go back to Scott DeHart at Zashin and Rich and talk through that with him to see if he has any ideas or notions or samples of what other communities have done that they've kind of put together, something that's stratified like that.
Okay, perfect. And yeah, part of this process, I know we're reworking quite a bit, which is it's a great thing. And we're talking about revisiting every couple of years. What I would like to do is set up our code so it reflects what we're actually doing, because I know that's not necessarily true in some of these.
Correct, and that's why we did say there's probably about 5 sections that whatever happens here, we'll have to go back and bring back through the personnel committee, because they will need to be changed.
Yeah, so
in some way, shape, or form.
That's why I guess focused on some of this is let's rip off the Band-Aid and make sure our structure is pretty transparent and consistent.
Well, I know one of the things Mayor Mackin has charged me with in the very, very near future is looking at our organizational chart to make sure it makes sense for not just today, but for the future and how we think we're going to grow. So that could also be part of that process, because there's nothing that would not allow council to pass this in this format to then go back and make adjustments
Right.
based on a proposal that Mayor Mackin may be making. I mean, this doesn't lock you into any one set of,
Right.
stratified groups of people. I mean, it's a first start. It's a start that it's kind of like resetting the start button after 15 years. But I'm certainly happy to answer any questions I can. If there's questions that come up, I know there's a lot of material that we sent out to you. Please feel free to just email me or call me, and I will give you the answer. And if I don't know it, I'll find it. I'll track it down.
I know China and Jen are here, and we're still on this topic. Did anybody else have any questions before I asked the?
No, go ahead. I had my questions answered at the committee.
Okay, do you guys have anything you want to say? Anybody else here before we move on to a different topic? And again, we're not voting on this tonight.
No, we're not voting on it tonight. I think it'll just be a further discussion at this point.
Okay.
All right, very good.
All right.
But if anybody at any point wants to ask me my opinion, obviously, we'll wait for it. Probably a little more than you'd want, but.
Very good.
With that, I'll move on to, I don't need to do anything further with that
No.
legislation. All right. I'll move on to the report again. We discussed salaries for mayor and council. Mr. Coleman stated that Bowling Green recently changed the salary for city council members to the PERS minimum. They also approved future increases based on PERS minimum. There was a discussion about the current council salary versus PERS minimum, which is the PERS minimum $82.18 with a 1.75% increase each year. Mr. McCarthy noted that to align the two would be approximately a $700 increase. Mr. Weber said that he is okay with it and it would take away the need for future discussion. The committee agreed 3-0 to recommend the proposed change to council salaries. There was also discussion regarding changes in the salary for mayor. Mr. McCarthy said that in discussions with Mayor Mackin, he has said if you make a salary too high, the position can become too political. Mr. Weber said that the current salary of $28,000 seems too low, but the salary Bowling Green decided on of $45,000 seems too high. The committee agreed 3-0 that $35,000 is a nice compromise, and they asked that the language be added that the salary for the mayor will be reviewed every 4 years commencing in 2024. And I don't have legislation on that, and I'll circle back to that in a minute. Other business, Mr. Weber asked about the hiring process and whether candidates that might not be in our first choice are considered for subsequent vacancies before we start the hiring process over again. Ms. Chalfant said that it depends on whether it's a civil service position and the time that has lapsed since the original hiring. Then the meeting was adjourned. So as I noted, there was no ordinance prepared for council salary and mayor's salary. But I would, part of the reason we had that discussion at the personnel committee is so that we could move it on to the council for discussion. And I would anticipate, we were anticipating doing a first reading much like we did with the pay bands on that tonight. Unfortunately, that's not in front of us. But with that, I would like to open the floor for discussion on thoughts on that because I do feel like that's more of a council as a whole subject. If fellow council members would like to weigh in on that.
I do have a couple quick comments. First question I would ask is if this was to pass, it's not going to take effect for anyone who's sitting here now. It only would take an effect on an election. So the question I have on that, is that going to be something that's going to take effect on this election, or is it something you're planning to bring forward to take effect in the next election?
You know, that is a question we specifically asked Kate to look into. I don't know if she provided the answer. The intent was that no one up here, I don't know that it was supposed to affect this coming election or not.
That would be what I would recommend, is that this has nothing to do with this upcoming election at all.
Mr. Pullman did ask Ms. Sandro to look into that and provide an opinion on that, and I don't believe she has done so yet. I will make sure on Monday morning that she's following up on that.
Yeah, and I believe, and this is what I can tell you what my response to her was. I think she said she wasn't sure, but she thought they could potentially go into effect for the people that were elected in this upcoming election. I said that I'm not opposed to that being the case, but I would understand if other council members took issue with that, and that was going to be an important question to answer. We could potentially change the effective dates based upon what position council took.
Okay. I know personally, and this is just me personal on this, I've never liked the idea of council voting raises for the position. I know this came up before in the charter, and I was in support of having something like that included in the charter because it puts it to a vote of the citizens. So I just really struggle with actually supporting us voting for this, even though it's not going to affect me personally with any increases in what council is being paid currently. It would be for future councils. I just always struggle with this. Probably for the last time this came up, I voted against it primarily because I struggle with council voting for the pay of council itself. But I do see that, with all the work that everyone puts into it, that there is definitely something that should be discussed. I just would like more public input.
I think that was the reason that, we were suggesting it go with just the PERS minimum, because then council doesn't, that takes that away out of council's hands in the future. I think that was the whole idea of this. Then it's just standard, which is
Yeah, my thought was the PERS.
barely more than what it is right now. So just leave it in the PERS minimum, and there really never has to be any discussion. Council will never have this issue of voting for themselves anymore.
That makes
It
sense.
just seems like it just made sense to me. Why not get that enacted as soon as possible?
And with the other point that I was making about it, with the upcoming election, I really would recommend that this would be in effect for the 2023 election year, primarily because essentially this would be a change for the upcoming election without having other people that may. I don't think that $700 is going to encourage someone else to necessarily want to put their name in the ring. But then you also have the mayor race as well. That's a $7,000 difference, and nothing against you, Mayor. But it's something that can affect someone's decision to run or not. And when the filing deadline has already come and passed, I would just recommend that this would be something that takes into effect in a future election year, not the 2021 year.
Well, on that issue, excuse me, I think I'm gonna wait for Kate's opinion. I think those questions are all answered by state law as to when these, I mean, you could still go further than state law. I recognize what you're saying, Jonathan. But as I recall, I think the state law gives us pretty good guidance.
It does.
So that, obviously, an elected official, we can't vote tonight to increase our salaries here tonight. So I think I'd like to have Kate weigh in on that. And to the question of increases, I think the last time we visited this issue, I was in favor of raising them. I think you need to have some compensation to attract young people with families, who are making a sacrifice in their own homes with their families.
Attest to that.
I think that if you keep this, political and low to show we're all frugal and all that stuff, it's like you're going to have with the administrative positions. You're not going to get the best people, because I'm not saying any of us are here for the salary, but again, I think of young people with families that we'd like to attract and be involved with our council. And I think that if they can at least say, okay, I make something for trotting over to that city building 6 or 8 times a month, I think that's well worth the investment you make on the city's behalf. So I'm in favor of the increases, and I hope that we'll go forward with implementing those as soon as the law permits us to do so.
Any other discussion?
Listening to what Mr. Smith said, I think you make a lot of valid, good points, and I agree with you that, quite honestly, I didn't do this for the money, and I don't know about you, but I'm assuming that you're in agreement with me on that.
No, I agree.
And I think you made some valid points, so I like what you had to say.
Any other discussion? Not?
The next personnel meeting will be August 24th at 5 p.m. and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Public utilities?
Thank you, Mayor. I have no report. Our next scheduled meeting is going to be tomorrow, July 28th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. Service Committee?
No report. Our next meeting is tomorrow, 28th at 5:30.
Good, thank you. Any other business to come before this council?
Yes, I have something. The city administration had informed us earlier in the month of July that we are going to receive $2 million less than the American Rescue Plan Act funds. When will we know the effect of this on our budget? And is there an update on that?
You are correct, Councilwoman Warren. So it was about $2 million that was reduced off of our allocation of about $4.8 million. We haven't gotten the final guidance yet from the Department of Treasury. We're still waiting on that so that we then can go to both the mayor and city council and let you know what the rules of engagement are, so to speak, to make sure that we're all comfortable with how we proceed forward and to see what input council and the mayor would like to get from the public on what they think should be, those funds should be utilized for based on the categories that we're eligible to utilize the funds in. So we're still waiting on that guidance. We do plan on budgeting for the funds. We have a new fund set up that is required by the federal government. We will budget all the dollars we believe we are allocated, and then we will appropriate that into, just as we did with the CARES Act money, into like 4 broad categories that we then can move around as necessary once those final decisions have been made. But we hope to do that as part of our 2022 budget process that our departments are working on right now.
Thank you.
So it'll be coming to you soon.
Any other business? Very good.
Adjourn?
I'll make the move. Second.
Hearing no objection.
China. I don't know if that counts. There was a question mark at the end of that motion. Move to adjourn?
Second.
Ron Burgundy.
I agree.